God measures everyone. God doesn't weigh our value based on our failures and our weaknesses, but he weighs the value and the worth of a man based on himself, based on his will, based on his purpose. So instead of you thinking that God is measuring you based on your failures and your weaknesses, I want you to know that God measures your worth or the worth of any sinner or anybody in any weaknesses, anybody in any circumstances in himself. Because the Bible says that, but God, I think it was in Romans chapter 5 verse 8, it says, but God commendeth his love towards us, in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. And what does this mean? This means that God saw our value before we changed, before we were transformed by his love, before we even believed, before we did anything right. He saw value and worth in us and commended his love to us, even whilst we did not see worth in ourselves. He saw something eternal. He saw a priceless individual standing in front of him. He saw something worth dying for. So when we talk about the grace of God is not God pardoning you. Grace of God is the very active power of God. You see, the grace of God is God actively serving you his life. And by the life that God serves you, that life enables you to see the value in yourself, the identity you carry, that you are of the God kind. So when Romans 5 verse 20 tells me, but where sin abound, grace did much more abound. Grace isn't ignoring the fact that you are seeing things, wrongly. Grace is God overpowering you so that you can have dominion over sin that is blinding you from seeing your real identity. So what the power of God, what the grace of God does is that it lifts the sinner from the dust of death and breathes divine life where guilt, where condemnation once reigned. So grace of God is the strength of God made available to man, not to excuse man's wrong, not to excuse man's interactions and man's behavior or man's character, but rather to end its reign, sin's reign on man. Because sin is what is giving you the poor knowledge of who God is. Sin is what is giving you the poor knowledge of who you are. Sin is now defining your worth, and sin defines you with death, because death is worthless. And that's why we see ourselves as worthless.